It is my very great pleasure to introduce to you the new VLC, that stands for Volunteer Leadership Council, not the conference, the VLC members of the 2025 VLC. Please understand that membership in this organization is for leaders in our community whose work has merited special commendation. The names that are listed there, it's the third year in a row that we have had a person from each and every chapter in the nation. And in addition, sometimes we have a couple that is initiated. Now, we've got more people than we have chapters because we did something unusual, and we're going to keep doing it. And that is, we as members of the AAC, and I apologize for using just the lettered acronym, that stands for the Adult Advisory Council. These are people with CF who advise the foundation with regard to things that especially impact their community. And members of the AAC who have fulfilled their term, we felt had done so much that they should automatically roll onto the VLC. So this year it includes members who are rolling off the AAC in order to do that. If we could please, could we have all of the members of the Volunteer Leadership Council of 2025 who are here, please stand up so that we can honor you and say thank you. Stay standing for a moment. All of the other members of the VLC who are from any class, would you please stand up and join them as well? I want you to know that historically, that is all I am supposed to do. I am supposed to sit down now. Years ago, they told me that. I violated the rule. I failed to follow instructions, as I oftentimes do, and I have finally forced them to capitulate and allow me to say just a few words more. However, because they're always worried about it, they have moved me from the last of the program to the beginning of the luncheon in hopes that I won't take up too much time, and I will try not to. I want you to understand I am, however, going to do something unusual this year, and it's because, for a variety of reasons, I am going to step down as the chair of VLC this year, and I hope you will excuse me because of that for violating one more rule. And that is, I understand that the theme of this year's conference is Together We Will, or can, Together We Can, but to me that was a little too tepid. If you will indulge me for just a moment, I hope that you will allow me to use Mike's theme of Believing Together We Will. Now, my reason for saying that is because I believe it is based on the history of the foundation that when we believe together that we can do anything. We can even become the gold standard, the best in the world. And I think that's worth trying to emulate. And yes, I'm going to tell you a story. But I'm worried about all of you who were not there last year. It's your fault, but I'm still going to indulge you. I'm going to give you a brief workup on what we talked about last year, which is to go back to the first 25 years of our foundation, in which we were pretty much like any other medical foundation. There were parents who were desperately trying to keep their child alive as they prayed and dreamed of a day when there could be something that could save their child. It was a fitting theme then that we would have a conference that would say, driven by a dream, because a dream was all that they had. Finally, a step forward came in the form of the comprehensive treatment program that was developed at the Cleveland Clinic by Dr. Leroy Matthews. And I spoke about it last year because it was at that time that he all of a sudden said, look, if what we'll do is we'll try a really active intervention program of antibiotics, high-calorie diets, and an intensive parental instruction program which consisted of turning your child upside down and beating them, then they can improve their lifespan. And it did. It did. It moved from 3 years old as a median age to 18 years old. It was the first time that parents had a scintilla of hope in their life that their child might be able to survive. So it was a perfect story for me to tell on the theme of last year's conference, which was hope in action. I'm a big believer in hope. K.C. White has a master's degree in hope. Hope is an essential step, but it's a step only on the way to believing. It's a big deal to have gone from 3 to 18. And it was something that was worth celebrating, but it wasn't enough. Frank DeFord, in his book, Alex, the Story of a Child, said it well. He said, you didn't give your child life so much as you just postponed their death. It wasn't enough. Hope was nothing but a flickering flame in our lives. And that allows me to set the stage for the story I'm going to tell you today. It's the sequel to what happened and I talked about last year. The National Foundation office had moved from New York to Atlanta just to save money. There were 70 some odd chapters, and they were supposed to send 55% of the money they raised to the national organization, but none of them did. The chapters raised about $12 million total per year, and out of that, less than $1 million had been spent on research. There were 50 some odd trustees. About half of them were elected on a regional basis, and the other half came from national appointments, but they were all national trustees. They met on a quarterly basis, and again, Frank DeFord talked about those meetings where he said that hardly a meeting was held that some trustee's child had not passed in the interim. Not that much different than all sorts of other medical foundations. And here's where I begin what transformed us. It was in that context that Doris Tolson, a CF mom, a national trustee, embarked on a mission to get more money from the chapters to the national organization. She believed that it was necessary to get money in order to find a cure. That was not a revolutionary idea. It was, however, an unsuccessful mission on her part. Her effort was especially cut short when, of all places, she reached Cleveland. There it is, the richest and the most successful chapter in the nation, the one that all of a sudden had developed the comprehensive treatment plan. And the buzzsaw that she encountered was a CF father by the name of Bob Dressing, whose young son had been born with cystic fibrosis and been saved by Dr. Matthews when he developed an infection that was so bad he had gone into a coma. And now this woman was walking into the chapter asking for money for an ineffectual national office from a successful chapter and a successful clinic. Nothing could have been more outrageous. He was incensed, and he told her to go home. It was a classic confrontation, cure versus care. And here's where I want to ask you a question, and I want each and every one of you to answer this question. Think about it for a moment. Where would you come out on this question? With limited resources, do you try to cure blindness or do you try to buy individuals a seeing eye dog? Think about that for a moment. Which would you do? Well, those are the rocky shoals upon which medical foundations have foundered for years. And here it had happened to us. The need for care is immediate. And for a parent, obviously, the need for a cure can wait. Incensed by the nerve of this pushy woman, Dressing decided he was going to run to be a national trustee elected on a regional basis from Cleveland and the area surrounding it. He was going to stop this marauder from crippling his and other chapters. He ran on that platform and he won. And then he arrived in Atlanta for his first meeting in order to see the dysfunctional nature of the national office. 50 employees, primarily engaged in educational efforts to raise the awareness of the disease, and nothing talked about as a cure. It didn't take long for Dressing to leave a trustee reception and head out for a drink on a Peachtree Avenue bar that was nearby. This is what he had been elected to do, and this is what he had found. And he went into the bar, and he found an equally depressed Doris Tulson, who had left because she felt it was just as ineffectual. No, this is not a rom-com. They did not all of a sudden find common ground and everything became happy. But they did become frenemies. And I use that word just to show you how modern I am. It took years. It really did. It took years. They continued their conversations together. And ultimately, Bob Dressing understood the need for a cure, and Doris Tulson understood the need for a state-of-the-art care at the clinics. And when Doris Tulson became president of the foundation, a CF mother in 1976, she named Bob Dressing her vice president, a CF father. Always remember that. This foundation was created by, led by, and led to greatness by CF parents, this community. It was at that point that the CF Foundation began its transformation. The headquarters was moved to Bethesda near the National Institute of Health. Bob Bell was hired as the chief medical and scientific officer. And when Bob Dressing succeeded Doris Tulson as president of the foundation was then entirely dissolved. It was shut down. It was eliminated. And what happened is it was reestablished as one single national organization with all the money being swept from the chapters into the national office where decisions were going to be made with regard to research and incentives were going to be given to the chapters based upon the quality of care that they delivered. What happened? What mystical event took place? And incidentally, I can't emphasize that enough. It was something strange. Harvard professors have studied this. I'm talking about, this is the truth. It was taught in the Graduate School of Business at Harvard, and they used it as an example of business transformation. I'm certain that there's a study there. There's data sets. I'll bet you there's a quadratic equation somewhere on what happened. But you know what happened? Doris Tulson and Bob Dressing decided to believe together. to believe together that we could cure cystic fibrosis while elevating the care at all the clinics. And initially by using the data that had been compiled by Dr. Matthews into what it was a new national registry. 2 parents believing together. But I want to emphasize, this is not how it happened. This is how it started. Because it couldn't have been done. It was impossible to do unless the 2 of them went out and convinced all of the chapters to join in a single organization. Do you understand? It wasn't just that 2 people believed together. It was that our entire community had come to believe together. And that is the story of the most remarkable story in medicine. The entity that has become the best in the world. What is the lesson? Well, for me, it's that it's time to put dreams and wishes and hope aside. And I wrote that and I immediately said to myself, no, that's not true. There is a place for dreams and wishes and hopes, and I've heard it recently. I've heard it from the people with cystic fibrosis who have been successfully put on modulators and for whom their dreams and wishes and hopes are coming true, to be doctors and lawyers and firemen and dancers and singers and whatever they want to be that they couldn't have been before. That's the story of cystic fibrosis, people. It's the same story that history has repeated over and over again. I apologize, but let me just give you a few examples. You're Abraham Lincoln. We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, but that this nation will have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people will not perish from the earth. From FDR in the middle of the Depression, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. From Martin Luther King, I have been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but I have seen the promised land. And just to show you I am truly modern, Ted Lasso. What did he put on the door above his office in the locker room? One word: believe. He didn't even know the rules of soccer, but he told the team, if you will believe in yourselves and believe in each other, we will win. It is when a community believes together that their possibilities move from limited to limitless. If hope is a flickering flame, believing is a blaze that's bigger than a formerly allowed Aggie bonfire. I did that especially for you all. But wait, I've got to say this. This is my disclaimer. This is the thing that normally at the ad comes very rapidly. This is not easy. I am not telling you that believing is some magical pixie dust that yields success without your effort. But it is when you decide to believe that you will have the vision, the plan, the strength of will, the resilience, and the power to overcome any obstacle, any impediment, any setback. And believe me, there are obstacles and headwinds that we face. I do understand that. But believing is an attitude. It is a choice. It is not a DraftKings bet based on statistics and data for who's going to win the Final Four. It's not a timeline I am offering. It is a commitment that comes from your heart. I am asking you to believe that we will get this done. And I am not asking you to believe because I believe it will be easy. I'm begging you to believe because it will be hard. I decided to believe when Piper received her second double lung transplant on a Christmas morning with only days left to live. Could just as easily have been from those years before when I had cried myself to sleep after listening to her cough after she had been beaten until she too had cried and begged her dad to stop. I don't care what causes you to make the decision to believe. You can decide to believe from a feeling of joy and gratitude for the ability of your child to breathe and to live. You can make the decision to believe from desperation and fear, and from the loss that filled vases outside with 100 roses and could have filled vases with hundreds more. You can believe because somewhere in the world right now, there is a mother watching her infant child die with no knowledge that the odds are high her next child will die as well. Folks, you can decide to believe simply because you're mad as hell and you're not going to let this disease do it anymore. Believing is the only antidote for the task that we face ahead. Do not let yourself be plagued with doubts. Remember what Paul said last night in his Nike ad. Just do it. We need to be resilient. We need to be creative. We need to be unified. We need to have every single player on the field, and that includes some of our very best players who are people with cystic fibrosis and who need to be integrated more into all of the work that we do. Yeah, together we can, but believing together we will. I normally end this and I say, okay, everybody get on your feet and all the other stuff that goes along with these talks I've given in the past. I'm not going to do that now. I am, however, going to stand before you and say, I believe. And I'm going to ask each and one of you as individuals, not as a group, as an individual. I'm talking to you specifically to look into your heart and answer the question, are you willing to make the decision to believe that we will? If you can make that decision, would you then please stand up so we can see if we are also together in that belief? Let me sit back. That was why I want that. Look, I'm going to finish this the same way I've finished every opportunity I've had to talk to y'all. And this is directed to each of you individually as well. I love you. You are the ones who saved my daughter's life. And you are the ones who will cure this disease. You are the ones who have made a difference. You have made us the best in the world. Godspeed, and thank you so much for letting this little boy from Abilene have an opportunity to be a part of this wonderful community. Thank you.